now. All right, everyone, thank you for joining Workshop Wednesday. Today is October 7th. It is noon, and this is our ongoing series. Okay, so today's topic is application rounds, when to apply, pros and cons. And this is a series that's presented by Ms. Yazdani at Mountain View High School and me, Laura Duran, at Los Altos High School, your College and Career Center coordinators. And today's workshop is going to discuss what are the various college application rounds, how to decide to apply, and then kind of the pros and cons of each. All right, so let's get into this. There are sort of generally 3 rounds that you hear about, but there are a bunch of little differences that are also going to be published on various websites. Sometimes they mean the same thing, sometimes they mean something very different. But just generally speaking, there's early decision, early action, and then regular decision. And we'll go into each one of those. And then just some other notes. It's really never too soon to start familiarizing yourself with these options. So there might be some seniors in the room, but there might be some younger students as well. And I think that being aware of these terms, there's so much new vocabulary in the college application process, it can't hurt to start knowing that they exist and knowing what they are. And then the second part is preparation is really key. So by knowing your options, you can work backwards and then determine what are you aiming for or what's realistic based on your circumstances. But in some of the earlier options, you really do need to be working ahead of schedule in order to be well prepared. And then for everyone, it's just really important to take some time on self-reflection. What type of environment are you looking for in a college? And so this is a much larger discussion than what we'll have time for today, but you know, in a lot of these rep visits, they're talking about our school is set in a very specific location, or our school has a very specific feel to the campus. And with thousands of schools around the world for you to pick from, how do you really start narrowing down which college experience is best for you? Now, for some students, it might be a particular set of opportunities, like, this very specific program, or I really want to have a lot of like research experience before I graduate, or I want to have a very international experience, or I want to have a geographic experience. So maybe you want to try living on the East Coast, and maybe you plan to come back to the West Coast, or maybe you really want to live somewhere in the middle of the country and give that a shot. Maybe you want to be in a very large city, an urban setting, or you want to be in a more rural, very college town feel residential campus. So there's a bunch of different factors that might help you narrow down or drive your decision. But once you kind of get to that part of knowing what you're looking for or what's important to you, then you can start seeing which colleges offer that experience. And then from there, you can start saying, okay, which one it would be like a stretch for me, which one is kind of on target for me, and which one am I like, a very strong candidate for, and then what application rounds do those particular colleges offer? And then that's what we're going to be talking about today are those rounds. And then something that I don't think is talked about all the time, and it's not appropriate for like a general quick conversation about college, but in a workshop Wednesday, it's very relevant, which is thinking about college applications kind of like chess. Now, I'm not a chess player, but probably some of you out there are. I have played, but you really need to know the rules of the game and then come up with a strategy that you're going to follow. And so if you're working ahead, it can be much more than happenstance. Like I'm just kind of filling things out and pressing send. That can also work, but you can be a lot more strategic in your college application process. And then just another thing to remind students, I know in your experience and at school, we think a lot about, the higher meaning of college, this opportunity for you to make significantly more money over your lifetime. Studies show that college graduates have a perceived higher quality of life. They seem to be happier with the trajectory of their lives. So that's all on like the benefits of the personal stuff. But colleges really do function like businesses. Even like the nicest, most holistic colleges, they still need to balance their budget. They still need to keep their doors open. And um, there are things called institutional priorities that come into play. And so institutional priorities do vary by college. Sometimes those are not transparent. We cannot see what those are, but just knowing that that exists, and that'll come up in a couple of these slides. And then for students, the recommendation is that you have a balanced list, and that through that balanced list, you also factor in these different application rounds. Okay, so again, please drop in any questions into the comments, and then Ms. Yazdani can interrupt me, and we can answer those if they come up as we go along. Otherwise, you can definitely wait until the end. But I want to make sure that all of this is clear, because I'm talking about some complex topics very quickly. Okay, and it's okay if you don't know, because a lot of this is new. To that point, I sometimes hear students in rep visits asking a question like, how much will this cost if I'm from California? And so I just want to clarify that there are two types of colleges or universities. Some are public and some are private. Now, if it's a private university or college, it's going to be the same like sort of sticker price tuition regardless of where in the country you're from. So Santa Clara University is a nearby private school. Their cost is going to be the same whether you live in Los Altos or Mountain View, or if you live in, New York City, because it's a private school. So there's one tuition rate. And then you have public schools. Back to the UC Santa Barbara example, UC Santa Barbara is going to cost a certain amount of money if you are a California resident, because it's our state public institution. Same with like Cal Poly and the CSU system. Versus if you have a cousin who lives in Michigan and they want to apply to UC Santa Barbara and they get into that school and they're a Michigan resident, there's going to be a different cost for them to attend. Now, if we reverse that example, if you are applying to the University of Michigan, which is a public school, as a California resident, you're going to be paying an out-of-state tuition price, versus your cousin who lives in Michigan would be paying an in-state tuition price. So if you're going to a private school visit, then again, remember that tuition's the same regardless of what state you're from. And then for the public schools, that's where the in-state or out-of-state tuition conversation comes into play. Okay, so let's start talking about these different application rounds. So for some schools, their application opens on a specific date. The University of Northern Arizona University came and spoke yesterday, and their application opened up in June, which is so early, but students could start applying for fall of 2021 in June of 2020. And then for other schools, it might be July, it could be sometime in August, and then it kind of continues from there. But rolling means that colleges will review your application once it's submitted, and then on an ongoing basis, get back to students with a decision in a few weeks is typically the timeline. And that could be anywhere from 1 week to 4 weeks. It could be a few, 5 or 6 weeks, but it's relatively quickly from the point that you apply. So on the bottom there, I added some names of the universities that have a rolling admissions. So Beloit, Penn State, University of Pittsburgh, St. Louis University, the University of Alabama, University of Tampa, ASU, University of Northern Arizona. Now there are many more, but those are just some examples of colleges where if you pressed send today, you're going to get a decision back in a few weeks. And then there are other schools where they don't have a rolling admission. So regardless of when you apply, they're going to review all of the applications, all of the applicants, and then get back to everyone on a specific date or a specific time in the future. Okay, another type of application round is early decision. And then you'll start seeing some schools have early decision 1 and early decision 2. So let's just talk about early decision. It's often abbreviated as ED. So back to that acronym soup that we sometimes talk about. ED is a binding agreement between you and a college in which you agree that you will attend that college should they offer you admission. You can only apply to one college ED. If you're accepted, you have to withdraw all of your other applications to other colleges. So it's a weird way to put it, but think about it like you're proposing to the college. You're saying, you're my number one. I'm 100% in for this. And if you accept my proposal, like we're in a union together, a legally binding agreement. And so it's a very serious decision to make, and it requires a lot of thought. So some of the pros for doing this, and again, also in the back of your mind, be thinking about that chess analogy. So this is a strategic move on your part. The pro is that you're really showing your commitment. When colleges receive the early decision applicants, they look at those and they're like, any single one of these students that we admit to our college is 100%, going to come to our school. There's like a very minor exception if financial aid is an issue, but that's like a very, very small percentage. And so put yourself in the shoes of that university that's also a business. If you have a stack of students and you can say yes to any of these, and you know that they're going to be paying tuition, they're going to be saying yes to your college, you can start determining what your next year will look like, what your budget will look like, and kind of building your incoming class around that. So there's an advantage for the colleges at this time. And then the advantage for you as the student is if you are a well prepared candidate, like you're within range or you're competitive for that school, you really do have a better chance of getting in this round. And for those same reasons, because it's such a big commitment and it's such a big sign of interest. So a downside to applying an early decision is it's very restrictive. I mean, it's like you could possibly only be applying to one school. If you get in, then that's it, you're in. That's the college that you're going to be going to. It also requires that you do work over the summer or that you have just really flown through things in the fall. And so if you haven't really started on your college applications, or if you're not quite sure where your number one is, then early decision one is not going to be the application round for you. It also sort of requires that you have strong grades and activities by the start of your senior year, because you're going to be applying based on what you've done up to this point. And so these colleges will be admitting you based on where you're at today, not what you're expected to do this semester. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slides, I should say. So ED1, universities that use this or have this available, some examples: Brown, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell, Duke, Northwestern, Dartmouth. There are more, but these are some schools that offer the ED1. Now, some schools offer early decision 1 and early decision 2. And so these are some of the examples of schools that offer both. So Boston College, University of Chicago, Tufts, Smith, the Claremont Consortium schools, so all of the 5 Cs, Santa Clara University. So ED2, it's the same concept as early decision 1, but just with a slightly later application deadline. So instead of November 1, maybe it's December 1 that you need to be doing all this by. So it gives you a little bit more time, but all of the same considerations. Okay, restrictive early action. So restrictive early action is a non-binding option, which means that you are not obligated to attend if you're accepted. However, if you apply restrictive early action, you may not apply to any other schools in the early rounds. So like you can't apply early decision to one school and then restrictive early action to another school. It's saying the school, my top choice school, doesn't offer early decision. They offer this restricted early action. It's my number one school. I would love to go there. I have a better chance of getting in than in the regular decision rounds, but you are still a competitive applicant. Then this might be what you choose to do. The difference between restrictive early action and early decision, again, is if you get in, you don't have to go to that college or university. It's just much earlier if you got in. You would also know if you got rolled over into the regular decision, so you got deferred to or moved into regular decision, or you might get denied early. So you might just find out earlier that you got denied from the school, in which case you do not get to reapply in the regular decision round. Some downsides to this, similar to early decision, it does require advanced preparation. And these work the same way. You get to only pick one. And so some schools that offer the restrictive early action, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and Princeton. Okay, now we just moved to early action. Early action allows students to apply earlier to a school, typically in October, November, December, earlier than the regular decision round. And then you get an earlier admissions decision. So students sometimes find out before winter break or in January before you return to school for the second semester. So another pro to this is that you're still showing commitment to that college. The school knows that you did your research. There can be some financial aid benefits at some schools. So they say like, oh, we want students to apply early. We have certain merit or need-based scholarships that we want to give away early to incentivize students and encourage them to pick our school. They make those offers early to students. So there can be some financial advantages to applying early to these some of these schools. And then same sort of downsides. It does require that you've been preparing in advance, and some restrictive early action plans work similar to ED. You only get, I should probably not have put that one in there. Early action, for the most part, you're able to apply to as many as you want, but you should check your early decision or restrictive early action language to make sure that there's no it's not prohibited to also apply early action. So some early action schools, Chapman, Loyola Marymount University, Caltech, University of Colorado Boulder, Georgetown, Howard, and then early action 2. So that's the same idea that we talked about in early decision 2. So it's the same sort of rules, but just with a later deadline. Hofstra, Illinois Institute of Technology, University of Redlands, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So those are some examples for early action. And there's way more. There's a very long list, and you can look by state. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through what those different rounds mean, some essential bits, you should be applying to college when you are best prepared. And so you shouldn't feel like you need to rush through something because you want to hit one of those deadlines. You want to make sure that you've had time to write your essays, get some feedback on those, that you've done your research, that you're ready to go. Now, if you've done all of that and it happens to be on an early timeline and you've thought through your options, then that's great, but you shouldn't rush to get it done. It also means that your grades are strong, that you are well prepared. The admission rates are better in the early rounds, but if you're not competitive for that school, applying early isn't going to make the difference to have you be admitted. Everyone that's applying early presumably is a strong candidate. So it's saying if you're a strong candidate, this is your best chance. But if you're not a strong candidate, then applying early is not going to make the difference to help you get admitted. If you feel that the semester 1 of 12th grade will help your academic record, you might want to wait for regular decision. Now, I'm not talking about like you have a 3.8 and then you're going to have a 3.85 and you think, well, I shouldn't apply early even though I'm ready because it's going to boost my GPA, a hundredth of a GPA point. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you had a tough time, let's say sophomore year, and you just then junior year, you only had one semester, but this semester you're back on track, you're taking some challenging courses and you are on track to maybe get straight A's or close to that, and you know that your GPA is going to bump a lot, then maybe it's better to wait until you have those first semester grades. And then if you haven't had time to write the essays or research goals, definitely wait for a regular decision. Okay, so now I'm going to show you this slide, which is a document that's prepared, and I can definitely share the link with you, but it basically has every single college, and then it shows the early decision acceptance rate, the regular decision acceptance rate, the percentage of the class that was filled from early decision, the early decision to regular decision acceptance ratio, and then the additional admissions plans that are offered for that particular school. So I just took this snapshot, and I can always come away from this once we go live and we can look at any school that students are interested in. But let's go to like Bucknell, for example. So the acceptance rate in early decision was 63.6%, whereas in regular decision, it was 32%, and 44.9% of their freshman class was filled from the early decision pool of applicants. And so it's a 2-to-1 ratio there. Let's go down to Claremont McKenna. You guys, if you're in the visits, you know I love the Claremont schools. So the early decision acceptance rate, 28.2%. The regular decision rate at Claremont McKenna is 8%, and they filled 59% of their class from early decision, which is actually like very, very high percent. So it's 3.5, you know, more likely that people are getting in here. So you can just see like kind of the dramatic swing of things. Bowdoin, 50% of their freshman class was admitted through early decision. And then if we go down to Colby, that's the highest on this screenshot, 64.6% of their class was admitted from the early decision round. Okay. All right, so last week, Workshop Wednesday, I loved how Ms. Yazdani had you all participating in a case study. I didn't do as thorough of a job, but hopefully we can have some fun with it. All right, so imagine a student. This student has a 3.9 GPA, strong extracurriculars and volunteering on their in their resume and on their activities list. The student started working on the applications early in the summer before senior year. So finished junior year and like almost immediately really started working on the applications. Does have a #1 dream school that offers early decision. In the chat, would you please write which round, like, do you think the student should apply ED? Yes, no, or yes or no, and why? You know, I guess what I'm trying to look for is like, what more would you want to know about this student? And then what would you recommend and why? So I'll give you a second to do that. We'll look at the chat. Oh, I'm loving it. Okay, keep going, guys. This is good. Okay. Okay, so some of the comments in there, and you can go ahead and keep them coming, is students saying, hey, yes, apply ED. This student seems prepared and they probably wouldn't benefit from rating for regular. Exactly, great. Another student said ED. Another student says ED1 definitely. The one consideration would need to know their financial situation, which is an excellent point. Exactly. So the only consideration would be, you know, this student, do they have specific financial needs? And if so, it could be helpful for them to talk to an admissions rep to say, you know, here's what my family's financial circumstances are. Is ED a good option for me? Or like, does this school guarantee to meet 100% of financial need or not? And a lot of schools do, but some don't. So that's something that a student would want to know more about if they were thinking ED for this like #1 dream school. And then another student said early decision because they are competitive, strong in grades, extracurriculars, and already prepared to submit their application. Exactly. Yep. Okay, good. And another person came in with the financial aid decision comment, which is that could be the big consideration. And that's definitely where I think it would be worthwhile to have a chat with the admissions representative for that university. If you have an ED school and you're well prepared and everything's on target and you want to discuss the financial aid component, that's a completely appropriate time to talk to the admissions rep. Okay, another one, student 2 has a 3.0 GPA. I kind of talked about this before, struggled in 10th grade, taking challenging courses in senior year, on track to get straight A's, has started working on college apps. What do you think for this student? And why? Because I know I'm leaving out a lot of the details, but what like if you were their advisor, what factors would you want to ask them? What should they be considering? Great. Okay, so some of the comments that are coming in, regular decisions, so the student could benefit from showing improvement in senior year. Maybe they aren't completely ready for applying for early decision or early action. Another student, regular decision, so they can send that first semester grades out. Regular decision because they need more time to work on college apps, and it would be good to show the first semester of senior grades. Another one, wait for regular decision because they have yet to finish their college apps, which shouldn't be rushed and their grades can still improve. Great. I think that's amazing. So everyone's really getting it. The one thing I would say here is if a student has a school on their list where a 3.0 GPA and maybe their activities makes them a really strong candidate, and there's a non-binding like early action plan. For example, like the University of Nevada, Reno is kind of in our is a WUI school, and they don't have impacted majors. The student wants to go into I don't know, economics, and they're above the median GPA, then maybe the student says, oh, it's a quick application. There's no essays, there's no letter of recommendation. I'm going to send to there. That could be one consideration, but for schools where a 3.0 really isn't a strong enough GPA, then definitely wait for regular decision. Yeah. And then back in that other example, if the student does have a really strong first semester, they could always go back to the schools where they've been accepted, show that updated set of grades, and then that can also impact some of like the merit scholarship opportunities. Okay, this student, number 3, has a 4.0 GPA, still researching schools. They have 2 top choice schools that are equal in their mind, so tied for number 1, and strong extracurriculars. Which round would you recommend or not recommend, and why? And this is our last one. Okay, so anyone want to respond to this one? What do you think? Early action, early decision, regular decision. Okay, so a couple coming in. Early action or regular decision because they're still researching schools and shouldn't apply early decision exactly because there's not one clear specific winner. However, they are a strong candidate, so they could apply early action. Great. Another early action to both schools. Fantastic. And then regular decision, but they should look at ED acceptance rates because they could apply ED 1 to 1, and if they don't get an ED 2 to the other. Exactly. So that's like the chess pieces, like ED 1, if you don't get in, then there's always ED2. I like that. Early action for both schools, or restrictive early action for one of them because they would benefit from more time working on college apps, but also probably competitive for early action pool. Great. Wait for regular decision or early action because 2 decisions will make them choose between the 2. Oh, because early decision will make them choose between the 2. Yeah, great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for participating, everyone. So just again, quickly before we get into some of the other chat questions, we have the 2 College and Career Center websites, and I really encourage you to go to these if you haven't already, because we're constantly updating information on here and trying to make it so that students, as they ask questions, we're putting resources and adding it there. And over here on the horizon, so last week, Ms. Yazdani led the UC Personal Insight question discussion. Today, we're talking about application rounds. Next week, we're going to be completing the CSU application, and then on the 21st, completing the UC application. Another plug, UCSB just said that every Thursday they do a step-by-step UC application workshop. So I'm going to be adding that to the virtual college events list that's linked in the Los Altos College and Career Center website. But just know that there are so many webinars in addition to what we're offering that you can go to. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording, and then let's answer some of those other questions